It's time you know known. Hello, my friend, and welcome to the 241st episode of the Sales Podcast. I'm Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer, your host. If you missed number 240, go back. Chris Bolger was homeless, and now he's the holder of 2 world records in the Guinness Book of World Records, all around physical strengths and feats. And he's a small dude, but man, he is strong. But he got clear on how to change his body and how to change his mind. And now he helps others do the exact same thing. I met him back in September. He's been to my home, worked with my entire family, and he's just a wealth of knowledge. He's humble. He's still young. So you'll get a lot out of how to get your mind right, how to set goals, how to overcome obstacles in that episode. In number 242, we've got Jason Canigan. He is a great sales trainer. Met him online. He has an amazing story of getting remarried, moving from Canada to his wife's home in the States, and he couldn't work. And the things he had to do to get with his immigration attorney so he could work but still produce and provide was an amazing story. But the knowledge he now has that he's sharing through his sales training company, you are in for a treat. So be sure to tune in. If you subscribe to the podcast, this will come right to you. And when you subscribe, it does help the show. So please do that. Thank you very much. Today we have Mark Schaefer. He is on for a second time. He's the author of a new book called Known, thus the beginning of the show. He does not spell his name like me. He leaves one F out. You know, he couldn't stand all the fame of people thinking he was me. So that's why he did that, maybe. But Mark's a really good guy. He's a professor at Rutgers. He's a sought-after speaker, travels the world, and but just a good human being, humble. So you're in for a treat hearing him again and what he has uncovered in this new book. Now, if you need help getting stuff done, getting more done, do what I do. Work with my boy Jay over at VA Staffer. If you go to thesaleswhisperer.com/VA Staffer, you get 4 free hours. And then if you do retain them, you get $100 off. So just this week, actually just yesterday as I record this, we sat down for nearly an hour, and I shared a screen. We recorded every step I take on this podcast, on my new video podcast called the CRM Sushi Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to that, where I interview the founders and executives of technology companies and have them do a video demo of their solution. And I ask them hard questions, about how their software works, where it's a fit. So that has been launched. Just had the second episode. We've covered Insightly, CRM, and Nimble. So check those out here. You can see them as a blog post as well. They're a YouTube video. And they have bonuses and links within there for the listeners, so for free trials, things like that. But Jay's team is documenting every step for me and then taking over everything they can. But having this documented and being able to just hand the raw files over to people to have it done, it just frees up so much more time. I always tell people, look at what you do 2 or 3 times a day or 4 or 5 times a week and have a process for it and then automate it if you can. And if you can't automate it, can you delegate it? Do that for everything, and that's how you'll grow. Okay, if you're bogged down and doing little things, you're going to have little results. You have to find people that you trust, people that are competent, pay them to do that job for you so you can work on what you're great at. All right. So again, check that out. thesaleswhisperer.com/VA. So VA stands for virtual assistant. So VA Staffer. Okay. And that'll redirect you to their landing page, 4 free hours, and then $100 off. Give them a try. Now let's bring on Mr. Mark Schaefer. Mark W. Schaefer, my brother from another mother, all the way from Knoxville, Tennessee. Welcome to the Sales Podcast. How the heck are you?
Westminster Schaefer. How are you? People don't know your middle name is Minster.
Listen, I'm the one asking the questions, being funny, and dropping the truth bombs here. You can't be stealing the show, man.
That stops now.
Golly, I mean, that's what I'm known for. That's what I'm known for. Do you like the way I kind of dropped that in there?
You are so suave.
Frico Suave. So, man, you are prolific. I had you on this show back on episode 129. That was on July 13th, 2015. And you lose the 37-cent bet because you said I wouldn't make it. And look, here I am, 241, and I'm having you back.
I never said you weren't going to make it. I must have been one of those blackout periods you were telling me about. Stop.
I got to edit that out. Okay, note to self, 1 minute, 13-second mark, delete. So, man, best-selling author of The Content Code, you have done it again with Known, the handbook for building and unleashing your personal brand in the digital age. Congratulations, my good friend.
Thank you. I think it's my best book, and I'm very proud of it.
So like a fine wine, huh? You getting better with age?
Who knows? Time will tell, I guess. But all I know is this is a book I'm proud of, and the reaction to it has been amazing. People are telling me that it's changed their lives, it's changed their businesses. One guy from London tweeted me and said, "This is the most inspirational book I've ever read." So that is pretty humbling to hear that kind of stuff.
Goodness gracious. Well, we will be sure to link to it, but we do want to hear a little bit of the inside scoop. Because in Content Code, I mean, you're talking about using content, right, to get the word out, how to do content correctly. Content is still king, is it not?
It is. I think if you read my books in order, which everyone should do, of course.
Twice.
Well, you need 2 copies of each because you got to have a backup in case something goes wrong, in case of a flood or something. It kind of shows the evolution of my thinking. So my first books were kind of creating content related, Twitter and blogging. Then I wrote a book about, it was the first book on influence marketing, about how content is creating this amazing new opportunity where we don't have to wait to be picked anymore. We can pick ourselves and grab our own opportunity to create power and influence on the web. And in the Content Code, I talked about, we got this problem now. We all have this opportunity, but it's getting noisy out there. What do we do about it? How do we get our content to move, to ignite? The content doesn't have any value unless people see it and share it. How do we do that? We need to develop that competency. And in this book, I really talk about it's bigger than this, but one of the themes is how do we put content to our use in a personal way? How do we create our own power? How do we even start? And the seed of the book, Wes, was really planted about 3 years ago when I was doing research for the Content Code. And I was talking with our mutual friend, Jay Baer, and we were having this debate. Can anybody be known? He said, I don't know. A lot of people ask me that question. A lot of people say, how do I do what you do? Where do I start? Can you train me? I'll pay you to teach me how to do it. He said, I don't know if I could do it. He said, I don't really know what it would take. What it takes. I don't know what I would do if I had to start over. So I could not get that question out of my head. Can anybody be known? It was like a dog chasing a tennis ball. I couldn't let it go. And so I started reading. I started studying, and I kind of went down this rabbit hole and ended up interviewing almost 100 different people from every walk of life in all over the world who are known. not necessarily famous, but they're known in their field of education or construction or finance, art, music. And what I found was that every person in every field, in every part of the world, did the same 4 things. So there is a process, and there is a path. And what I try to do with this book is codify that and twist it and turn it and figure out how do we get people to focus. There's lots of different exercises in the book that people can go through these exercises and help really focus and concentrate on what they need to do to follow those 4 steps.
Right. And that's a key word there. I haven't read the book yet, but based on what you're saying and based on my own expertise or experience, I should say, I'm going to guess and say that focus is instrumental in there. I would have to guess that if, like, to answer Jay's question, or if he were to answer them, it would be, maybe he can do it for somebody if they're truly passionate about something, right? And something that the world gives a darn about. Because I would guess if it's just for the money, I mean, can you really be known in a good way, right? And my gut response is probably not. But if you're truly passionate, and I remember I grew up in commercial construction with my dad and as an insulator, and seeing all the different trades working. And I remember sitting there on a lunch break watching a couple of guys. They were bricklayers. They were just building a wall. And my dad says, "Looks pretty easy, doesn't it?" And I'm a young teenager, 14, 15, like, yeah, it looks really easy. And he knew the guys. He had me try it.
Oh, gosh.
And it was just a total mess, right? These guys were professionals in their career. My dad knew them, right? He ran these big job sites, and he had a good crew. He knew the scaffolders. He knew the sheetrock guys. He knew the carpenters. He knew the masons, and they were known and they were focused. And that 10,000 hours probably came up in your research, huh?
Well, let's do it. Let's just do an experiment.
Okay.
Because a lot of the things you've talked about have really hit exactly on these 4 key steps. So you are someone who is known in your field. So what makes you different? Why do you think people follow you? What are you known for?
We can pick Infusionsoft. I'm well known in that niche, in that industry. And I'm known because I have put in the time, and I present the good and the bad in an honest, accessible way. So
you're a teacher about different sales techniques and software.
Right.
You have a lot of experience.
Yep.
And you use that experience to connect the dots and provide practical and honest solutions. Okay. So that's what you're known for.
Right.
And that's the first step. Now, you and I kind of have a little bit of an advantage because we've been around a while. We've had long, successful careers. So, for us, it's probably pretty bold. It's stamped in our DNA, what we're known for, what we love. Now, it's not necessarily a passion. What's your favorite sport, or what do you love to do when you have free time?
Something kind of crazy I just started is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Awesome. So Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is your passion. Maybe you'd love to explore that more, maybe do it every day. But that's not what you're known for.
Right.
That's not what you built your career on. So there's a difference between your passion and your sustainable interest.
Right.
You have an interest in selling. And maybe as you became known, maybe you even became passionate about it. Sometimes instead of following your passion, the passion follows you. Now,
right.
Let's go to step 2. There's a lot of people out there giving sales advice. How did you deliver your sales advice your sales advice in a way that connected with your audience?
How did I deliver it?
Well, number one, obviously, is a podcast. But how did you start? What were some of the first steps that how did you decide did you start with a blog, or did you start with a podcast? And why did you decide on a podcast?
Yeah, I didn't start the podcast until many years. I've had the podcast not quite 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I bought the Sales Whisperer domain name 11 years ago. And so I truly started, no website, just cold calling, inviting people to a local conference. A little workshop I'd put on every 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So there was a space there. There was an opportunity that was uncontested. People weren't doing that. And then eventually, as you built an audience who wanted to hear more from you, then you started creating content.
Right.
Through your content, you're expanding your audience, not just expanding the followers. People who follow you on Twitter, those are weak relational links. They're not necessarily going to buy something for you.
Right.
But through a podcast, something like a podcast, people come to know you. They like you. They hear your voice. They begin to trust you. And eventually, they'll buy something from you. So, and the other thing is you've had done over 240 episodes. So you have not quit.
Right.
I'm sure your first 6 months, it was maybe a little rocky. You had to experiment and feel your way through. So let's look at this. The 4 steps are, number one, you have to find your sustainable interest, which you did. And you need to take some time, not just following a passion headlong without thinking about it or having a plan. So that's really important. It's just what you become known for. It may be your passion. It may not. But let's think it through, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this. Number 2, you found a space. For you, it was like these live meetings. You were delivering your content in these conferences and in these workshops, and then it led to creating content online. It created the content you are doing now is podcasting, and you have a certain niche. People know you for your expertise through this podcast, and they love that. And your audience is growing, and then consistency. You've built this audience. You weren't an overnight success. You've been working on this year after year after year. Of the people I interviewed, it took them on average 2.5 years to really get traction. And that kind of reflects my own experience too. Somewhere around 2 years is when things started tipping for me on my blog, which led to books and led to speaking, led to consulting assignments. So those are really the steps. And what I found is that everybody who is known in their niche today did those same things. And that's why I was kind of confident asking you about it, because I haven't found an exception yet. And so a lot of people are just so overwhelmed by this notion, but you don't have to be, because all you have to do is go through these 4 things. Now, it's not for everybody. The timing might not be right. It takes a hell of a lot of work, but it is something that is accessible to everyone.
Right. And do you think, as humans, because of, I don't think as humans we've ever changed, right? But because of the proliferation and the noise of social media and whatnot, it's easier than ever to mislead people into having them think there is an easy button, there is a shiny object that'll make it easier, and so people end up being more frustrated than ever because of all the distractions that are so much easier to come across our desk now?
Well, I think that's a very keen insight. And when I was doing the research for the book, I got really frustrated by that, because I read everything I could, not just on social media, but books and online courses and videos and academic research. And a lot of the stuff out there is really fluffy. It's all about, finding your passion and forget about everything else. Forget about the money, forget about the people, forget about, building an audience. Just suffocate everything and just follow your dream. And that is not how the world works. It isn't. And it's not just a difference of opinion. There's lots of research that shows the world doesn't work that way. The number one reason people fail, the number one reason businesses fail, is because they follow a dream without a plan. There's nobody there, there's not enough people there who care, who will buy from you or help you achieve your goals. And so that's why it's so important to not just follow your dream, but to think it through and have a plan.
Right. Well, so then they end up with thinking they have to have an 87-page business plan, and then they overplan. Right? And then others say, no, it needs to fit on the back of a napkin. It needs to fit on the back of a number 11, whatever, legal envelope. So where's that happy medium?
Well, I think I guess I should mention that along with my book, there's also a workbook. And the reason I created the workbook was because I was just obsessed with this idea that I didn't want people to just read this book and then quit or forget about it. And so if I could create a workbook where they could actually record their responses to these exercises, and I've got bonus content, and I've got templates you can download that help you, collect information, actually measure your success. So I think as far as how far you need to go with a plan, I think it's just as simple. There are 4 steps in this process. If you can answer the question for each of those 4 steps, 4 answers, and then you're willing to commit to it, you've got the plan.
Right. Well, that workbook I can see being pivotal because I do, I guess, similar work than you. I maybe do more small business type consulting. But I see so many frustrated people. I see so many people, they're frustrated, but they're also fearful, right? And they just don't start.
Yeah.
Like in the world of Infusionsoft, it's $300 a month, and people are paralyzed. And I'm like a minimum wage virtual assistant is $15 an hour, unless you get them overseas, right? But so if you had somebody like physical, local, come to your place of business, they're going to be $15 an hour. So $300 a month is a $15 an hour person working 1 hour per day, 5 days a week, right? 20 working days in the month. So 1 hour a day. And I'm like, do you think this software, the kids don't get sick. They don't get hung over. The software works Saturdays and Sundays and President's Day. I mean, really? You're afraid of $300 a month? And they think so small. Yeah. Right?
Well, it's really a huge issue, isn't it? Just this idea of getting past the paralysis and starting. And I address that very directly in the book. And it's kind of like when I get through the four steps, I say, okay, now here's what's going through your mind. This is what's going to paralyze you. Let's address this up front. Let's kickstart this thing. And one of my favorite stories in the book, I'm sure you know of Ann Handley. Ann is someone that she's very accomplished. She's a successful businesswoman. She's a successful writer. She's a beautiful writer. And people admire her. And she talks in the book about how whenever she had her first job, she had no idea what she was doing. She had to fake it. And she still suffers from imposter syndrome sometimes. She just wonders, what am I doing here? Why are people listening to me? And how she uses that kind of as a competitive edge. And one of the things that really impacts you when you start talking about all these people who are successful and you admire, they all started at zero. They all started at the bottom. Nobody is born an expert, but you've got to take that first step. You have to.
Right.
And 6 months from now, you're going to be better than you are now. You're going to be smarter than you are now, and it's going to be easier to do. But none of that will happen unless you start.
Yep. Amen. I just got back from a conference, and I was allowed to bring a guest, and I invited a friend of mine, and it was local for her up in the Woodland Hills, Burbank area. And she's a very accomplished television producer, editor, started her own PR business, and she doesn't know how good she is. Mm-hmm. You know, so undercharging, and she was so fired up at the end of the conference. And I told her, you know, I'm like, you've been playing small. You know, and I think she finally gets it now, right? But we all do something for a while and we think, oh, everybody knows how to do that. So we undervalue ourselves, right? And how do we break through those self-imposed barriers and limitations, at least as far as like what our work should be valued at?
Well, you know, it's funny, Wes. I mean, you see that everywhere, don't you?
Yep.
You know, what do you think that is, the psychology behind that?
There's some bias. I've been reading all these biases. Like, you know, with all the presidential thing, everybody suddenly is an expert on fallacies, right? So people keep sending me these links, all these fallacies. So then I'm researching cognitive biases, and there's something like the knowledge bias or something like that. You know, you're just too close to your own stuff. It's the old, you know, you can't read the label from inside the bottle.
Yeah. I think some of the things I talk about in the book is one, fear of criticism. And my experience is that in general, when you try to help people authentically, you really have a heart for sharing and helping people. You know, you're not going to get a lot of people trolling you or something like that. And a lot of times it's a lot. The problem isn't as big as people can imagine. I think another thing people get stuck on is what would I say? It's already been said. It's already been done. And it does take a certain amount of courage to add your own story, your own personality. You have no competition. There only is one you. So if you can add your story, you are going to be contributing something new. Right. And the commitment, I think it takes an insane amount of work sometimes to do all the podcasts that you do, to write the blogs that I've written, at least 2 blog posts every week for 9 years.
Wow.
Never failed. Never missed. There's a lady in the book who creates an original piece of art, an original painting that she posts on Instagram every day. She's posted it every day since January 1st, 2013.
Wow.
So, but that consistency, that reliability, it means something to people.
Right.
You know, and it does take work.
Well, I know some will say, well, that's fantastic. And, you know, maybe by year 3, those blogs started making you some money. You know, somebody listening to this right now is saying, but I got to eat. I got to put food on the table. Yeah. You know, how do I put food on the table and become known? Well, I don't think it really has to be, a separate process. So let me give you an example, a very direct example that's related to sales. So, excuse me, about, I guess it was 3.5 years ago, I was bidding on what would be the biggest deal, the biggest contract of my life with a government agency.
because it was the government, they had this very strict vetting process. You had to do all this stuff, jump through all these hoops, and it included an interview. So they Skyped me, and this procurement team was sitting at this table, facing me down on this Skype call. I didn't know any of them. It was kind of intimidating, and there was a lot at stake. So I started explaining what I do and what I've accomplished and who I was, and in about 2 minutes through my discussion, the procurement director interrupted me. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Schaefer, we know who you are. We all read your blog." And at that moment, Wes, I knew case closed. Right. I had the deal.
Right.
Because I was known.
Right.
And it didn't happen all at once. It's okay to have it be an evolutionary process. And, in my book, I project, there's no cookie cutter solution for everybody, but I project, look, it's probably going to take 5 hours a week creating content, connecting with people, engaging with people, planning, responding, whatever you need to do. It's going to take about 5 hours a week, let's say. Well, I ran a business and I have a family that I could take care of and still do this other thing 5 days a week that eventually had a big payoff. And I'm sure you're reading a lot of the same articles I am right now about these forecasts about massive job loss of knowledge workers, meaning you and me, in the next 3 to 4 years because of algorithms and artificial intelligence. And I've read enough of it and I've seen enough of it to think it's probably true. And I think that now there really should be the sense of urgency to figure out how am I going to be different if we're facing that kind of an economy? How am I going to stand out? How would I compete if I needed to change careers or something like that? And so I think there's so many personal and professional goals that depend on being known today that it's not two. I don't see it as two separate things. I don't see it as you got to feed your family or you got to be known. I think they're linked.
Right. Well, and the main thing is I like to play devil's advocate, for those that are listening that may want to give an excuse. And the fact is, it is just work. Right now you may just be struggling to pay the bills and put food on the table, and that's fine. And we've all been there. But if you keep doing just enough, then you're only going to have just enough. Right? You're going to have to stop watching Netflix or maybe drop out of the bowling league or the softball team for a season, and I don't know, maybe cancel the gym and just do push-ups and pull-ups in your garage or, in your basement until you can save the money. And then in the 20 minutes you save on that round trip to and from the gym, you create that content. You do that 5 days a week, there's an hour and 40 minutes, and you don't watch one movie a week, there's another 2 hours, and on. Stop playing softball, and bam, there's 5 hours right there from practice and everything else. And you do that for a year, there's the 5 to 10 hours a week that you just carved out to start to become known.
I learned a long time ago. You can blog or you can watch TV. You can't do both.
Right. Exactly.
And it is work, and it is some sacrifice. And there's a quote in the book from this guy. If you can imagine, this guy, he makes music videos. It's just him and a bass guitar. And he makes these amazing, beautiful music videos covering classic songs. And it's now his career. And he's a YouTube star, just playing an electric bass. Mm-hmm. And he said, here is the one thing I've found for me and for everyone else I've met who's made it on YouTube, he said, these are people who are willing to put in an insane amount of work. And now he's enjoying the benefits of that. But so, I mean, one of the things I talk about in the book, this is not a book that's fluffy or filled with unicorns and rainbows. This is practical, real life, talking to real people. And one of the things, it's probably the most unusual, I guess you'd call it self-help book in a way. It might be the most unusual self-help book ever because there's a whole chapter that talks about why you shouldn't do this. And I actually have an essay in there from a guy who made a decision to not be known. And he said, we were expecting our first child. And I had all this stuff going on. And I didn't want to miss that. I just couldn't make that sacrifice. And you know what? I think that's great. I think that's fine. And he has a good career. He's not on the stage. He's not, writing the books. He doesn't have a podcast with thousands of listeners, but he's doing okay. And maybe his time will come. So I encourage people to have a realistic assessment and stay centered about this. Don't make a decision based on what other people are doing. Don't make a decision because you feel pressured by, some social media guru. Just stay within yourself and know what's true for you. What's going to make you happy? What's going to take you to the next level? And decide for yourself, can I go for it? And if you make that decision and you're willing to commit, I'm sure with all of my heart that it's possible.
Right. Yeah, and at a minimum, you're going to grow. Even if you wrote 2 blogs a week, if you wrote 1 blog a day, you're going to become better. You're going to become better at your job, better at your passions. If it's, if your goal, your dream is to turn a passion into a business, taking the time to make videos, to make blog posts, it just makes you better. So there really is no downfall putting forth this effort.
Yeah, there's this beautiful quote in the book from this lady. Her name is Jennifer James, and she's really made her name by igniting a movement online to get people behind using social media for social good. And she said, you have to keep going even when you're unsure of your impact. And as long as you see little signs that you're moving ahead, that it's working, you just got to keep going. Because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to tip. Right. And I think that's a hallmark. It's not just a passion. It's not just an idea. It takes grit. Right. And one of the things that you mentioned right at the beginning, I wanted to come back to this. You had you mentioned something, a very, very key idea about this idea of having an impact on people. That is in your heart. And you said, I don't think people can be successful long term unless they know they are having some sort of an impact. And you are exactly right. And it's one of the myths I see on the web today that so many people, to them, becoming known is being loud. Mm-hmm. It's about me, all about me, and look at me. Well, to make this really work in the long term, it can't be about you. It has to be about them. Right. And every person I interviewed at some point said, well, the reason I've been able to do this, the reason I've been able to persist is because I know I'm impacting other people. I know I'm making a difference. I know I'm helping and inspiring people. Right. And that's my fuel. I mean, in my heart, I'm a teacher. Right. And when I get feedback, and when someone says something you did today, something you wrote today, change the way I think or change the way I do business. I mean, that just keeps me going. And that's part of my grit.
Right.
That, that's why I've been able to blog twice a week for 9 years, whether I'm sick, whether I'm on vacation, whatever I'm doing, because I know I'm having an impact, and that's so rewarding.
Right. So how far in advance do you write your blog posts?
It varies. Sometimes I'll just get an idea and something's going on in the web, and I'll just whip it out, and I'll just say that's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, boom. And ironically, those are some of my most popular blog posts. And then others, I'll let them stew a little bit, especially if they're controversial.
Right.
I don't want to be reactive. Right. I want to be. It's important to me to be a leader, to demonstrate leadership, to show what does it mean to be a leader. That's important to me because I think I'm at that kind of a place in my life. And you don't want to be reactive, and you don't want to attack people. You want to attack problems, and you need to dispense hope. You just can't be negative. You can't just talk about problems. You also have to offer solutions. You have to lift people up. Serving, really, leadership begins with elevating others and caring about others and noticing what's going on out there. And that's important to me. I think those characteristics are important to the people who are most successful and who are known out there today too.
Mm-hmm. Do you release your blog like the exact same time? Like, is it every Tuesday and Thursday, or is it
pretty much? My what I usually do is I'll write what I would call like something epic on Mondays. Like, as we're recording this, today I wrote today is being a Monday. I wrote a blog post called 10 Epic Shifts That Are Rewriting the Rules of Marketing. And I put a lot of time into this, put a lot of thought into this, interviewed people. And then Tuesdays, sometimes I'll have a guest post if there's somebody out there that has a great idea, that a person I believe in, that I need to help them, or I want to help them, I want to shine a light on them. I'll say, do a guest post. I've got a couple writers who work for me, a couple employees that will do something usually on a Wednesday, and then Thursday I'll usually do my second post. And usually that's a little bit lighter than something on Mondays because I figure, hey, we're going into the weekend. Let's not take ourselves too seriously. Let's, talk about a trend or talk about something funny that happened.
Right. So like that epic post, though, will you stew on that like for weeks? Like, do you have 3 or 4 or 5 in draft mode?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And what I do is, I collect ideas all day long. Perhaps a question that you're asking today could end up being a blog post. I'll write it down, and I'll see something on TV. I'll see a headline in a magazine, and I'll think, how could that be a blog post? And I'll just capture that. Here's something silly. I saw some blog post or some article, and it said something about 5 sounds I make when I'm exercising. And so I wrote a headline for a blog post: 5 sounds I make when I'm blogging. Now that will probably never see the light of day, but it's an idea. It's just a headline.
That's just the sounds I make when I'm getting up out of my chair. Oh, yeah. Joints popping.
Yeah, and maybe combined with something I had for lunch. I don't know. But then I have the discipline that I block out a certain time of the week, 2 hours every week, without exception, without fail, and that is my time to write. It's not a thing that you do if you have the time. I schedule it just like I have an important meeting. I have that discipline. And then I look over, here are all the ideas I wrote down this week. Which one seems the most fun? Let's just riff on that one. And in 2 hours, I can create a great blog post. Mm-hmm. And then I might work on another one that becomes like my Thursday one. And that's kind of my process. The key is to always be collecting ideas, because if you sit down in front of your computer and it's blank and you have to write, that's when you run into problems. Yeah. And right now I've got a backlog of 262 ideas.
Do you like use digital bookmarking tools? Like Buffer, things like that?
Yeah, I like Evernote.
Evernote will save it, but do you? Yeah. So you just use the Evernote on like extension on Chrome or whatever, and just bookmark a article or something.
Yes. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, especially for in-depth posts, or maybe even something I might write for a book someday.
Right. And do you write it, like write on your WordPress and publish it, or do you give it to somebody to clean up and?
No, I do everything myself. Every word, if I have a guest post that it needs cleaned up, I've got somebody that can help me if a guest post needs a lot of help. But whenever you read my posts, it's all me. I even pick out the pictures. I write the headlines. It's all me.
Do you, do you do like the formatting? Like I'm looking at your top 10 here today, and number one, the spawn of artificial intelligence. That looks like it's an H2, blah, blah, blah. So do you do all the formatting and everything, or do you like give it as a word or?
No, I do everything. It's just because it doesn't really take that much time. Yeah. And, I think that everything you do and everything you don't do, everything you say and everything you don't say reflects on your brand. Yep. And I don't want this to look homemade. I want this to look sharp. Yep. I want this to be quality. I don't want there to be typos. I'm very unusual that I put thought into the art that I use with every post. Right. It's not just some clip art. Right. I want it to be beautiful. I want it to, if someone sees, maybe they'll read the post just because they saw the art on Twitter or Facebook or something like that. So, sometimes it's easier than others, but I do put a lot of care into the blog, because what I've realized over the years is that the blog, the content I create, the blog I write is everything. Right. It's everything. This is where I get my connections. This is where I build my authority. This is where I clarify my thinking that I'm going to teach about in a class. These are where the seeds of the ideas are planted of something that might become a book. These are the concepts that may turn into something advice I give in a consulting practice. So there's just so much benefit from going through the thought process of creating that content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I do it all myself as well. And I was asked to do a TEDx talk years ago, and I was nervous. I'd never given one. Like, it's so concise, right? I can teach a 2-day workshop. Just hand me a microphone and a whiteboard, right? I'll go for 2 days. But 18 minutes, what? Yeah. And I actually wrote it as a blog post. I spent months pulling the images, and then from there I made the PowerPoint, and from there I was able to give the talk. And it let me, formulate the thoughts. And then I did it again. I spoke at Entreport's conference on SEO. And that wasn't, I'm good at SEO. 'Cause I just kind of self-taught, but it's like, it's not like I'm not a ninja. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was the only topic they had left, and they wanted me to speak. So, I was happy that they, gave me the chance. And that really pushed me And I actually went and interviewed experts and I had them as guests on the podcast, and then created a blog post, and then I delivered a webinar twice just for free. So, hey, everybody, I just want to go through this. Just so it's, I have nothing to sell. If you want to learn about SEO according to Wes, and I actually had good attendance, and I was able to tighten it up.
Just awesome, because you never know where that will lead.
Yeah, and now it's a bonus that I give to people when they enroll in other programs, because it's still applicable, and I give them the recordings and everything, and but when it matters, take your time, right, and then you become known.
Yep, there you go.
Well, man, this has been fantastic. I've got links everywhere. Do you want me to send folks to businessgrow.com, and then I'll link to the known-book, or do you have other URLs we can share?
I'm laughing right now because it's actually businessesgrow.com. And the reason I'm laughing.
Oh, Businesses Grow. You're right. I'm reading it. I read it wrong.
You know what? But you're going to appreciate this. So the reason I called it businessesgrow.com is because I knew nobody could spell Schaefer. I thought, oh my gosh, there's so many ways to spell Schaefer, as you know.
Yep.
They're never going to find me. So I called it Businesses Grow. And I mean, I'd say 50% of the time, people even get that one wrong. So, oh well. But yeah, Businesses Grow. You can find everything about me there. I've got my blog. I do this podcast called The Marketing Companion with Tom Webster, which is a ball. We have a lot of fun. And you can see my books. All my books are up on Amazon as well. And the new book is available in paper, hardback, audio, and Kindle. So there's no excuse. You got to go get you one.
Very nice. Come get you some.
Go get you some.
Come say hello to my new little friend.
The book known.
Very nice. All right. Mark W. Schaefer, Businesses Grow, plural, businessesgrow.com. Thanks for being a guest on the Sales Podcast, man. It's been awesome.
Thank you, Westminster.
I can't take you anywhere. Well, I hope you had as much fun listening to that as I had recording it and then re-listening to it. What you hear is what you get. Mark really is that nice. He's that fun. I love running into him at conferences, chatting online. Like I said, he's a wealth of knowledge and a lot of good insight on what makes people tick, a lot of insight on social media marketing nowadays, marketing in general, persuasion. I like how he, went in and interviewed these people in the beginning, right? And he has an interest in selling. And then he said, maybe even became passionate about it. You need to embrace selling. A sale happens in every human interaction. A sale happens when you come to the stop signs right at the intersection at the same time. You're either going to bowl your way through or you look over and wave them on and they say, no, and wave you on. I mean, a sale is made when you go to a restaurant and you order. The menus are there for a reason. The staff, the owner, the chef wants to sell you on what's on the menu. They don't want you to add something, to the dish. They don't want you to order off the menu. And you have to convince them, sell them on why they, A, should do it, and B, why they shouldn't charge you more. So a sale is happening in every interaction. If you've ever asked anybody out on a date, a sale was made. If you have kids, they're selling you on why they should get dessert and why they don't have to brush their teeth, why they can stay up later. And you're selling them on why they shouldn't. Okay, so, but being known, like he talks about, being known, it helps in the sales process. It helps you become a known entity, a trusted resource, even if the prospect has only read your book or seen your videos or just seen your content online. They're getting to know you, and that softens them up, that warms them up. So they are more persuadable, more convincible. And so ultimately, it's all about sales, all of this. And I just, it's a sad little feeling I get when I see all these entrepreneurs that believe the better mousetrap myth. And I'll tell that story later, but the better mousetrap We only know about it because a salesman wrote it better, sold that concept better than the original author. Very interesting. I give that in one of my talks on the 7 social media sales success secrets. But a salesman sold the idea of a better mousetrap, because in reality, it's not true. That field of dreams, right? If you build it, they will come. It's not true. You got to get up and work. You got to hustle. You got to sell. You have to embrace sales and marketing. That's how you grow a big, successful business. And so I just see all these entrepreneurs that think, oh, they're just going to make a great product. Everyone will come to them. And it just doesn't happen. You got to get known. Okay? And that's all about selling and persuasion. To do that, it's hard to do it on your own. Get a team. But then it's hard to get a good team. It's hard to get an affordable team. It's hard to get a reliable team. Usually your team ends up being one person that you bring on because that's all you can afford. And then that person becomes a bottleneck, or that person becomes the one that can make you vulnerable because they have access to everything, and you become too reliant on that person. That's why I have a team. That's why I use VA Staffer, because he has 37 people on his staff now. It may be 47. I got to go look. I'll talk to him later. But dozens of people. He has 2 offices now, and project managers around the world. So time zone isn't an issue. English language isn't an issue. They can do anything from data entry to web design to graphics. And it's helping me scale my business, get my life back from being too busy with too many things I should not have been doing. We all fall victim to that. So avail yourself of the opportunity to bring on somebody for 4 hours, learn how to delegate, learn how to outsource, learn how to stop doing little things. So head on over to thesaleswhisperer.com/VA Staffer. You get 4 free hours with them. And then if you do enroll, you get $100 off of the setup. And then they're super affordable anyway. He's probably the most affordable, the VA services that I found. But I know Jay. I hung out with him this past weekend at Traffic and Conversion. We actually shared a room. Just a good human being with a good business. So check it out. You'll be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the show. Please be sure to subscribe. That does help. Please give a 5-star review. It's crazy how rarely we do that for people that we like. That 5-star review helps the show bubble up, helps it get found. The more people get found, the more end up coming to me for other business, which helps me keep this show for free. So subscribe and review. Thanks for listening. And as always, remember to sell different.